Keith Lee finally opened up this week about why he was off WWE television for the last 6 months. It's been a big mystery about why. We kind of, people are speculating about what it is because that's just naturally what people do. And the only thing that really made sense to me was that it was something medical, not necessarily COVID related, but that it was something, medical that was keeping him off television. Everybody was being very hush-hush about it. All of the cryptic tweets were starting to get very old. He would talk about wanting to tell us, but then implying that maybe the company didn't want him to, and he'd have to find some other way to do it, which he now denies. He says that it wasn't that he couldn't say anything, like somebody told him not to. He claims he chose not to, in order to focus on everything that he needed to focus on. But I said, when he's able to tell us, he'll tell us. I just got sick of all the speculation and just figured, okay, well, whatever. Whenever this thing is resolved, he'll let everybody know. But the belief earlier in the year was always that he was going to win the United States Championship in a triple threat match with Lashley and Matt Riddle before WrestleMania. This is when Lashley was still the U.S. champion. They had booked him very dominantly for months. And I said they booked this guy so dominantly that he should be the one challenging for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. But you've got to get that title off of him. And how do you do that without beating him? Well, triple threat rules in WWE dictate that the champion does not have to be pinned to lose his title. And so that seemed to be the working plan. And then Lee got pulled, and John Morrison ended up replacing him. So all this talk about how, maybe he's being punished or they're burying him didn't make any sense. It had no basis in fact. You can talk about questionable booking, especially since he's come back. That's perfectly valid. We could talk about questionable booking for half the fucking roster. But this idea that he was somehow being buried or punished, it didn't make any sense. Because it looked like he was in line for a push, and then it wasn't like he was all of a sudden losing matches on television. He just disappeared. So there had to be a reason, medical, family, that would be what would make the most sense. And now we come to find out that it was in fact a medical issue. Scary complications after a COVID diagnosis. He uploaded a video on Thursday, said that he contracted COVID in January and was off television for about 3 weeks. He came back the following month for one TV match against Riddle. And I went back and checked because I was curious which week that was. That was on the February 8th episode of Raw. He wrestled Matt Riddle. And the day after, he got a call informing him that there was something off in his blood work. And he said that some people may experience inflammation in the heart or the lungs with COVID. And in his case, it was from the heart. And that led to some scary times. He was forbidden from training or any kind of activity outside of a light walk because there was the very real risk that doing more than that, he could die. It could put a lot of stress on his heart and he could pass away. I've read about cases of pericarditis and myocarditis with COVID. I had pericarditis a few years ago, as many of you know. And it is not fun. You can go back and listen to that whole story of my experience back on Sound Off 521 after I came out of the hospital. I felt like I was having a heart attack. It mimics the symptoms of a heart attack. I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest. Now, in my case, they think it was a virus that caused it, but it can have many causes. It affects, what it is it affects the protective sac around the heart. Now, Keith Lee didn't describe feeling like he was having a heart attack and running to the emergency room. But obviously it was serious enough where it was touch and go for him there for a while. And he said it was like this for about 3 or 4 months. And he had several MRIs on his heart. It became a fight against death. And eventually WWE sent him to their medical doctor in Pittsburgh to get looked at. And he says it was to the point where he almost had to undergo genetic testing to see if maybe he had some form of heart disease. But eventually the inflammation subsided on its own. He got medically cleared. And the challenge for him recently has been getting back into ring shape. But it sounds like the worst of it hopefully is over. Although COVID can be unpredictable for a lot of people who start feeling better and then all of a sudden they feel like shit again. So hopefully in his case, that's not, what he's going to experience. But he wasn't even sure if he would be able to show up in Dallas when he returned a few weeks ago. He said when he first got COVID, his fiancée, Mia Yim, did not have it. And she gave up the chance to be in the Women's Royal Rumble match this year so that she can stay home and take care of him. And it was after that she also ended up getting COVID. But she refused to leave him alone, and he's not sure without her support if he would even be here right now. There were plans for her to debut on the SmackDown brand, and then nothing ever came from it, which I assume had to do with her staying home to be with him. So he's very lucky to have someone like that. His booking has been questionable since his return, but I will add this caveat, and I am not one to make excuses for dumb booking decisions by WWE. If you listen to this podcast, you will surely never accuse me of that. But I will say this. Even though his booking the last few weeks has been questionable, part of me does wonder if a big part of that has to do with them just kind of testing him to see if he's okay. I saw that he was in a dark match before SmackDown on Friday, even though he's already on Raw. Why would they give him a dark match? He squashed some guy. Why would they give him a dark match on Friday? It's almost like they're trying to let him get some reps in. To get back in ring shape, but also just see how he reacts, how his body responds. I mean, if you watch the video, the 5-minute video that he put up, even he sounded unsure of what the future may hold as far as his short-term health is concerned. So it's almost like, let's ease this guy back into the rotation. Let's see if he responds well. And if his body holds up and he seems to be doing better, then we can start to work him back into actual storylines. But why put him back in a big storyline if, in 2 weeks, there might be some kind of issue that requires us to take him off TV again? But it's great that he's healthy. Or healthier. I'm happy to hear that. It's very scary when you're dealing with any kind of heart issue. If he can stay healthy, I maintain that he can be a major player on either show, Raw or SmackDown, but his health has to come first. Without your health, you have nothing. Doesn't matter what spot you're in, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. When you get sick, you would give anything to be healthy again. You would give it all away to be healthy and feel better again. That is more important than anything Vince McMahon could ever give him. 2 weeks ago, Bray Wyatt was released by WWE, and people were speculating about his mental health, something that I took pains not to do on this podcast because I didn't fully trust those initial reports that claimed he was having a tough time dealing with Brody Lee's death and he asked for time off. I mean, I believe that Brody Lee's death hit him very hard, but the fact that that had something to do with him wanting time off television, the so-called source that came from is not a legitimate source of information, and I will not mention that person's name. And as it turned out, surprise, surprise, his absence from television had nothing at all to do with that. According to Fightful, who reached out to sources connected to Wyatt, they confirmed his absence had nothing to do with, quote, falsely reported mental health issues. They said he is 100% healthy and he is able to wrestle. During his time off, he was working on adding creative elements to his character, and The Fiend was originally slated to return this past Monday night on Raw from Orlando. That had been the working plan. And in addition, he also had family engagements already scheduled in May and June that would have taken him off TV anyway. So there were plans for his return, and he would have been back last Monday had they not fired him. The million-dollar question is, why did they decide to change the finish? I still would love to have an answer to this. Why did they decide to change the finish at the last minute, the weekend of, to his WrestleMania match with Randy Orton, if he wasn't hurt and he didn't ask for time off? When did Vince McMahon make that call? And why? That is what the curious part of my brain would love to know. Because it seems like that was when he made the call to make Alexa Bliss the new Fiend. And outside of that one Firefly Funhouse on Raw the next night, we never saw Bray Wyatt again. I look at their roster, and I can name probably a dozen or more people that the company will never really make any money with. Yet they decided to get rid of Bray Wyatt for what was said to be budget cuts. I just don't understand it. And Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast previously reported that there would be a Queen of the Ring tournament for the first time this fall, and that the finals would be held at the next WWE show in Saudi Arabia. Sweet Saudi money, which is tentatively scheduled for October 21st. But it looks like that won't be the only tournament final held that night. He is also reporting that WWE is reviving the King of the Ring, which was last held 2 years ago when Baron Corbin won. And the finals will also be taking place at Sweet Saudi Money 6. Xavier Woods is ready. We know that. He's been waiting for this moment his entire life. I'd love to see him get the shot. I want to see him in the tournament. I want to see him go all the way to the finals, and then I want to see him lose. King of the Ring is a heel gimmick anyway. But I'm sure he is waiting very patiently for the official announcement and for his qualifying match. But I think so many people at this point, especially if you follow him on social media, it's in his Twitter name, Future King of the Ring. If you follow him on social media, if you are a fan of his Up, Up, Down, Down channel, which has a lot of subscribers, there are a lot of people who are well aware of his love and infatuation with the King of the Ring. So I definitely would like to see them incorporate that into a story on TV. If they don't, it is a huge missed opportunity. I'm sure Vince McMahon knows nothing of this, though, so it's going to require either Woods himself or one of the writers to tell Vince McMahon about this. I doubt he gives a shit. But if he's not part of this tournament in some way, then there is no justice.